Welcome to Billionaire Mindset, the channel where we break down how the world's greatest builders think and act. Today, we'll uncover 5 timeless rules from John D. Rockefeller principles that turned a boy with a ledger into the architect of an empire. Before the empire, there is a boy with a notebook. The house lurches between hunger and sudden gifts, but the page does not flinch. Every cent is trapped in ink, and over months, the numbers begin to talk. In that quiet arithmetic sits the seed of scale measurement, creates control. Control compounds. Rockefeller's early obsession with ledgers was not quaint bookkeeping, it was a weapon against volatility. While others fixated on price headlines, he stared at unit lines: input cost per barrel transport, per mile, waste per batch. The ledger converted chaos into signals and signals into policy. When he later touched rail barrels and pipelines, he was simply pulling levers first, discovered in those early columns. The model is ruthless in its simplicity. What gets measured gets optimized, what gets repeated compounds. Margins widen 1/10 at a time until the spread funds the next advantage. Competitors chase revenue. The compounding mind chases contribution margin, cash conversion, and variance control. The job day ritual was not nostalgia, it was operating cadence. Close the books, read Reality Redeploy Capital. Across years, this rhythm creates a power law, a 1 to 2% monthly efficiency edge becomes dominance. Apply it now. Start with the only 3 numbers that govern survival contribution margin price. Variable cost, the cash conversion cycle days, inventory plus days receivable, days payable, and fixed cost runway cash, dry's monthly burn. Build a single-page dashboard that updates weekly. If contribution margin is thin, attack leakage, re-quote, suppliers change packaging, redesign the offer to raise willingness to pay. If the cash cycle is long, compress it with prepayments, annual plans, or faster fulfillment. Establish a reinvestment rule. Every cost dollar saved funds, either distribution reach or a compounder skill. Set a daily 15-minute CFO block to log, spending a weekly variance review to learn from outliers, and a monthly pricing check against differentiated value. A notebook beat an industry because it exposed where power really lived inside precise, repetitive choices. Keep the ledger honest, and the ledger will keep you solvent. From here, the next move is obvious build systems and seize the choke points those numbers reveal. Ledgers reveal where the bleeding happens at the seams between activities. Rockefeller turned those seams into systems. He began by simplifying the horizontal plane, rolling up refineries, enforcing uniform process control, and branding standard as a promise that kerosene would not smoke, stink, or vary. Standardization compressed variance, variance compression widened margins, and widened margins financed the next layer, vertical control. Barrels, chemicals, storage, shipping, and eventually pipelines stopped being external variables and became internal levers. Where rivals suffered interface tax with every handoff, his operation flowed as a single machine. The governing idea is to own or contractually command the choke points that set your unit economics. Map the value chain from raw input to customer cash. Circle the nodes with high volatility, high transaction cost, or outsized influence on pricing power. That triad is your control thesis. If a stage's failure would cascade across the system, it is a candidate for ownership. If scale beats specialization, buy. If flexibility beats fixed cost, ally, with terms that simulate ownership volume commitments, service level penalties, data feeds, and renewal options that favor you. Rockefeller's pipelines were not just pipes. They were negative working capital engines, pulling cash forward and pushing costs down the curve. Horizontal integration delivered cost curve leadership. Vertical integration stabilized inputs and distribution, so the cost advantage was durable. Quality control reduced refunds and reputational drag, and predictability itself became a moat wholesale buyers paid for reliability as much as fuel. This is the minimum dominating system, the smallest set of assets and agreements that lets you set tempo for the industry. Do not chase everything. Seize the bottleneck, then design incentives so counterparties are richer with you than without you. Every dollar invested should either eliminate a variance source, compress the cash cycle, or expand distribution reach. Translate this into action. Build a control matrix rows as chain stages columns, as volatility margin share, substitutability, data advantage. Score, then allocate capital to the top two bottlenecks, where you cannot own bind with term sheets that deliver the same effect, exclusivity windows, rebate ladders, and information rights that give you X-ray vision on demand. Systems create the conditions for favorable deals. The next move is to negotiate like you're the inevitable winner without overplaying the hand that feeds your flywheel. In rooms without cameras, fortunes move on commas. The cost curve is already tilted by standardization and control, so the conversation stops being "what's the price?" and becomes "what architecture moves profit to our side?" Rockefeller arrived with alternatives in hand, competing rail lines queued for volume, a pipeline plan ready to activate export buyers willing to absorb surplus. He negotiated after manufacturing a credible BATNA, so the zone of possible agreement was defined by his patience and the other side's payroll. Time became a weapon. He could wait because his unit economics were safer while counterparties bled with each day of uncertainty. He reframed price wars into term wars. Public rates surfaced as theatre. Backstage, the economics lived in back-end mechanics, rebates tethered to reliable throughput service level bonuses for on-time carloads, capacity reservations that guaranteed his flow while leaving rivals stranded. Exclusive windows and renewal options acted like soft ownership. When information asymmetry appeared, he converted it into prediction shipment data from partners meant he could anticipate congestion, front-run inventory, and anchor negotiations with realities no one else had seen yet. The lesson is structural price is a variable. Structure is policy. Policy compounds. Adopt the same stance. Before any major agreement sketch, your counterparty's income statement and balance sheet as if you were their CFO. Identify where a marginal dollar of revenue or a marginal hour of downtime hurts them most. Then trade what is cheap for you but precious for them. Forecast. Accuracy lane, density, prepayment or integration work. Anchor the conversation on reliability and load factor, not sticker price, and make every give or get. If volume commitments rise, then data access deepens. If term length extends, then a right of first refusal on future capacity becomes non-negotiable. Keep a clean public optic and a resilient private core. Win-win on the surface can be win-keep beneath, when the terms lock in cash timing, information rights, and optionality that persist through cycles. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Silence forces the other side to reveal constraint and need. Set the calendar to your advantage, extend deadlines when volatility favors you, and compress them when counterparties are carrying burn. With structure secured, the next frontier is using chaos itself as an acquisition price, where downturns become deliberate shopping seasons. When markets shake, weak hands discover they were renting their balance sheet. Rockefeller prepared to own his. The Panic of 1873 did not change his cadence, it revealed it. While refiners across Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and New York buckled under collapsing demand, Standard kept two plants running guarded, cash, and waited for prices not of oil, but of companies to break. The ledger that once hunted pennies now hunted assets. He used credit lines like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, refusing maturities that could force sales at the bottom. Banks extended terms because operations were consistent and reporting was forensic. With each month of distress acquisition, multiples fell and integration cost dropped as talent followed solvency. The Cleveland massacre was not a spasm of brutality. It was the compounding logic of preparedness, meeting a market priced for fear. Cash in this model is not idle. It is an option premium. It buys the right, not the obligation, to capture capacity when competitors cannot refinance inventory, when freight contracts turn punitive, when payroll beats pride. Time favors the best underwriter of variance. Shocks compress the distance between today's price and intrinsic value for those who can close quickly and stabilize. He did not buy everything. He bought flow tankage that reduced bottlenecks, plants that fit his process control routes, that shortened cycle time. Each deal reduced volatility for the whole system, lowering cost of capital again, enabling the next strike. Crisis became a flywheel: efficiency, trust, credit, acquisition, more efficiency. Adopt the stance. Build a balance sheet that can breathe under stress, fixed costs, trimmed to essentials, variable costs, truly variable debt, laddered to avoid cliffs. Establish acquisition criteria now, before the fog rolls in, so decisions snap to pre-written thresholds rather than adrenaline. Track leading indicators, supplier delinquencies, spot freight whiplash, customer downgrade chatter, and pre-wire funding. So signatures, not searches, determine speed. In a downturn, price discipline earns respect, but certainty of close earns assets. Move on targets that collapse your variance or extend your distribution reach. Walk from trophies that add narrative without cash flow. Patience sets the trap. Liquidity springs it. Integration makes it stick. The reward is not headlines, it is a quieter P&L, permanently advantaged. Control of flow is control of fate. After the buyouts, Rockefeller hardened the system where money actually moved from well to flame, from invoice to cash. Pipelines became quiet monopolies under the streets, frictionless, tireless, indifferent to strikes, lowering unit costs, while compressing days in transit and days sales outstanding. Railroads could posture in the press, pipes cleared in the night. Each new segment thickened the network, and density worked like compound interest. A route with reliable volume attracted more shippers. More shippers justified lower costs. Lower costs widened price gaps that rivals could not close. Distribution was not overhead. It was a machine that printed optionality. Optionality turned waste into fortune. In the kerosene era, gasoline was a nuisance byproduct. Pipes and storage made it capturable. The automobile made it inevitable. Because the distribution spine already existed, Standard could reroute byproducts to new markets at marginal cost, converting yesterday's offcuts into today's profit pool. The lesson endures: build channels that move molecules, electrons, or information so efficiently that new lines of business can plug in without rebuilding the highway. When demand shifts, capacity does not panic, it pivots. The compounding lives in cash timing. Wholesale buyers paid for reliability, and reliability allowed payment terms that floated the operation with customer money. Negative working capital is not magic. It is trust formalized. With every on-time delivery and consistent flame, Standard earned permission to be paid sooner, while paying later, turning the cash cycle into a source of leverage without adding debt. Data rode the same pipes' flow rates, regional drawdowns, seasonal spikes. Information became pricing power in polite clothing, letting offers adjust before the market officially moved. Adopt this posture. Design one cash-fast channel where your product arrives predictably, invoices clear quickly, and demand signals come home amplified. Let operations and finance sit at the same table, so logistics choices serve the balance sheet as much as the customer. Treat byproducts, offcuts, and ancillary data as real options, instrument them, store them, and keep a short list of adjacent markets where they are valuable on short notice. Distribution is not the last mile. It is the compounding mile, the asset that makes every new idea cheaper to launch and harder to copy. With the spine secure, the question becomes where to place the next billion-dollar dollar, which partners, which bets, which timing. That is capital allocation. Great operators build engines. Great allocators decide where those engines point. Rockefeller's rare advantage was doing both, then knowing when to step back and let capital do the heavy lifting. After the pipes were humming, he elevated selection over sensation. The partner choice said everything Frederick Gates, a disciplined evaluator masquerading as a pastor, and John Jr., a calm negotiator trained to price risk instead of headlines. He pushed decisions to the edge, closer to the information, while keeping guardrails of character, cash discipline, and time horizon. Allocation became policy-placed dollars only where the flywheel shortens time to advantage, or where convexity pays for the misses. The Mesabi range made that policy visible. A 120-mile vein of high-grade ore was not a bet on mining fashion. It was a forced move on the steel cost curve. Selling cheap ore to competitors cornered Carnegie without a speech, and when J.P. Morgan stitched the pieces into U.S. Steel stock-replaced rivalry. That is power law thinking one asset that reprices the rest of the portfolio. The playbook is unemotional. Underwrite variance that the system can absorb. Tie returns to choke points and prefer instruments that compound quietly. Royalties transport rights, upstream, feedstocks over trophies that drain focus. Treat capital as a language for strategy. Before each placement, write a one-sentence thesis that a skeptic could falsify, define the operating signals that will trigger a stop, and set the exit that returns optionality even when the story disappoints. Push mid-ticket experiments to domain experts and reserve the balance sheet for moves that shift the industry slope. Do not diversify for comfort. Diversify for asymmetry pair, cash-yielding core operations with a small number of bets that, if right, reshape the map. Partners are filters for your future P&L. Choose cadence and character over charisma, then stand back and let their local data accelerate the loop. Apply it with precision. Build a portfolio that pays today and re-rates tomorrow, a base that throws off cash each quarter, plus a handful of positions tied to bottlenecks your system already touches. Refuse opportunities that do not reduce variance, expand distribution, or deepen pricing power. When the right offer arrives, take stock instead of applause, and let other people's growth compound your quiet wealth. Allocation is strategy made irreversible. Place once, place well, then protect the compounding with culture and time. Empires last when time is an ally, not an adversary. Rockefeller extended his clock by mastering reputation as a strategic asset. Reliability at the lamp flame earned trust at the invoice. Philanthropy institutionalized that trust beyond market cycles. Hospitals, laboratories, and schools were not only charity, they were signals of permanence, a public ledger that balanced the private one. In an industry hunted by outrage and regulation, legitimacy functioned like insurance lowering risk, premia opening doors, and buying patience when mistakes surfaced. The culture followed the horizon: fewer theatrics, more compounding; fewer announcements, more results. The mechanism is plain. A long-time horizon sharpens selection because mediocre options decay while exceptional ones scale. Consistency compounds brand equity, and brand equity compounds pricing power. Conservative leverage preserves optionality, so shocks become opportunities instead of tombstones. Quiet standards, on-time delivery, clean product, clear books map onto durable cash flows. None of this requires sainthood. It requires coherence. When operations, capital, and public posture point in the same direction, momentum survives storms. The firm stops chasing quarters and starts guiding decades. Convert that horizon into a loop. Start with clarity. Define the single economic engine you are truly building, and the metric that proves it is getting stronger. Move to focus strip projects that do not move that metric or protect its inputs. Act, ship, sell, negotiate, integrate small steps daily that tilt the cost curve and thicken distribution. Seek feedback instrument processes so exceptions are visible in hours, not months, and let customers' behavior, not opinions, set the next adjustment. Iterate, reinvest the spread into the bottlenecks that most reduce future variance, then repeat the circuit with fewer words and tighter cycles. The story that began with a boy and a ledger ends with a system that outlived him because it rewarded patience, precision, and principled control. For those who build, now the path is clear. Let discipline set the pace. Let structure hold the gains. Let time do the heaviest lifting. Fortunes follow focus. Build, compound, repeat. Thank you for watching. If these insights sparked new ways of thinking, share them with someone who needs the mindset shift. Subscribe now so you never miss the next deep dive into the billionaire playbook of strategy, capital, and compounding power.